Fire Force, a shonen series that is polarizing on almost all corners of the anime and manga community. It isn't difficult to find videos or tweets on Fire Force on how bad of a series it apparently is, or how the fan service completely breaks the tiny goodwill the series has.
I've never been so turned off by fan service in my entire life until I watched Fire Force, man.
Flirts with fan service in the most forced way possible, and it distracts from the weight of those huge moments.
Tamaki's running gags of walking into a scene and immediately tripping on nothing so she can awkwardly land in a sexual position, or just standing still only for her clothes to randomly fly off, was insultingly stupid.
At the time, I, who just got into anime, decided to take this opinion as an absolute fact and completely avoided the series on practically all levels, despite me being somewhat interested outside looking in. This lasted for a while, until I decided to give the series a fair chance and make my own opinion about it. I watched season 1 and I had a good time despite some of its shortcomings. Then I watched season 2 and I felt very invested in the story, the world building, and the characters. And of course, me being an impatient individual, I read and caught up to the manga right before the series officially ended in February 2022. Wait, did I mention that all of that happened in the span of a week? Well, yeah. Sit back and relax, cause this is going to be a long one. To explain my love for this series, I need to start from the very beginning. Not from where Shinra, the protagonist of the story, begins, but more so the universe Fire Force is set in. 250 years ago, from the year 198 on the solar calendar, a catastrophic event occurred called the Great Cataclysm. Flames exploded around the world, which are called Adola bursts, and left most of the world uninhabitable, as well as consume everything humans have worked for and cultivated over the years. According to the Holy Soul Temple, one of the organizations that formed the Special Fire Brigade, Raphos I and his apostles went on an expedition to find light, in which he found the Adola burst flame. As he returned, he introduced Amaterasu to the people, which ended up serving as the power plant to Tokyo many years later. However, the Great Cataclysm didn't leave without setting everlasting effects, as the unsolved phenomenon of spontaneous human combustion took over the world, which caused people to burst into flames instantaneously. Some humans turned into infernos, fire monsters that are basically immortal until their core in their chest gets destroyed, while others were able to adapt, control, and manipulate fire, making them pyrokinetics divided in generations based on how they're able to use fire. Those who are able to control their fire abilities potentially join the Special Fire Force, whose purpose is to investigate the nature and origins of spontaneous human combustion and purify the souls of the Infernals with a prayer that is prominent throughout the series. The flame is the soul's breath. The black smoke is the soul's release. Ashes thou wert an art. May thy soul return to the great flame of fire. Latom. Now, some of you might probably be asking, why did I start with this and not with Shinra, the main character of the story? You see, the reason why is simply because every intricate detail of the world of Fire Force serves as the vehicle to tell its story. So much so that without it, the series would have never been able to even take off. I will expand on this idea in a second, but I simply ask to keep this in mind and bear with me as I go through Shinra's story. Shinra's story begins arguably as any cliche shonen protagonist does. Living with his mother, Mari, and baby brother Sho, he proclaims that he wants to be a hero and always protect them. Of course, things do not go his way, as one day he wakes up in his house in flames. With Sho nowhere to be found and his mom presumably dead, he encounters a demon inferno, and after his third generation ability activates for the very first time, he knocks himself out and ends up getting saved by Captain of the Special Fire Force Company 1, Leonard Burns. Because of Shinra's devilish smile, neighbors and even classmates put the blame on him for his supposed family's death, calling him a murderer, and even worse, a devil. From that point onwards, he was unable to make a genuine smile again. This was the case until he eventually joined Special Fire Force Company 8 with people like Captain Obi, Lieutenant Hinawa, Witch Queen Maki, Sister Iris, and his arch nemesis from his school days, the self-proclaimed Night King, Arthur. While most of what I explained thus far in this video doesn't really make a strong case for the quality of the series, from this point onwards, I'm diving headfirst into what makes me love Fire Force so much, and that is what's in my opinion the writing decision that saved the series from what could have been a potential generic disaster. Remember when I said keep in mind the components of Fire Force's world? Brace yourselves, cause this is going to be a bumpy ride. Admittedly, I'm someone who is biased when it comes to mystery elements in any piece of media, let alone anime and manga. Let's look at Attack on Titan for a quick second. Apart from the development of the story and characters after the series' time skip, what solidified Attack on Titan as a story at the time was how Isayama handled the Pacer reveal, arguably one of the best executed mysteries in all of fiction. The build up to that reveal, alongside the many hints and puzzle pieces across multiple seasons, is what made it so satisfying to witness once it finally arrived. Well, I'm not going to make the claim that Fire Force did it better, as that would be the biggest damn lie I would ever tell on the channel. It sure still did a phenomenal job as well. Aside from investigating the cause of human combustion and purifying those who get turned into infernals, the purpose of Special Fire Force Company 8 is to also investigate companies from 1 to 7 and find information that they could potentially be hiding from the entire organization, as each company is aligned with different organizations that created the Special Fire Force, like the Fire Defense Agency, the Holy Soul Temple, and business conglomerate Hajime Industries. This was the moment the series hooked me, and despite the flaws the series does have, which I will get to later on, it was never able to let me go. This writing choice by Okubo, the creator of not only Fire Force but also the highly praised Soul Eater, opened many possibilities to where he could take this story, and for the most part, he did a pretty good job. With Company 8's goal of investigating the other companies, we slowly but surely get to learn more about the world in which its leading cause of death is human combustion. After Company 8 fights Company 5's Captain Hibana that showcases Shira's hero complex in full display, she ends up joining their cause, and shortly after, Shira and Arthur go to infiltrate Company 1 to see who is creating artificial infernals in their jurisdiction. This is where we get the first twist of the series, in which a manipulated Tamaki and enthusiastic Rekka, a lieutenant of Company 1, uses what is seemingly a bug to turn children and a mother into infernals. One of them luckily ends up surviving. As Rekka beats the ever-living shit out of a questioning Tamaki, because of Tamaki's signal, Shira was able to get there and put a stop to Rekka's madness. However, things get turned upside down when Rekka reveals that he works for the Evangelist for the purpose of making the world into a second sun. He gets defeated by friend and Lieutenant Kareem, who freezes him entirely. Unfortunately, before Rekka gets brought into questioning to get more information out of him, he gets shot in the chest by white-clad members, which kills him. And thus, a conflicted Kareem joins the investigations also to find the truth that is being hidden, and Tamaki joins Company 8 as quote-unquote punishment for being used by Rekka. This gets even more complex as Shira encounters independent parties like the unpredictable Joker, who knows a lot more than he lets on, people like scientist Victor, who was a former head of incendiary research at Hajime Industries, who then joins Company 8 alongside engineer Vulcan, whose family built the power generator Amaterasu, Company 7 located in Asakusa Village with Captain Benimaru, who in simpler terms is the Gojo of the damn verse, and Lieutenant and former Captain Conroe, in Company 1 Captain Leonard Burns, who saved Shinra when his house burned down. Then we have the antagonists of the series, the white-clad who work for the Evangelist. There's characters like Haumea, Charon, who is Black Air Force energy personified, Shapeshifter Yona, Special Fire Force Company 3 Captain Dr. Giovanni, who was responsible for the demise of Vulcan's family, Lisa, who was manipulated by Dr. Giovanni, and I think that's about it. Oh wait! Freaking Shinra's own brother Sho is also a member of the White Clad. As the series progresses, we see the White Clad in search for pillars who have control of the Adola Burst flame. Shinra and Sho are revealed to be pillars, but this is also where we get introduced to characters like Inka, who ends up joining the Evangelist after literally leaving her friends in the most brutal and irredeemable way possible. Remember that one kid who survived Rekka almost turning him into an infernal? Yeah, his name is Nataku, and he's also a pillar who has been held in the development lab of Hajima Industries, guarded by mentally twisted Kurono. With all of these moving pieces in the story that is Fire Force, seeing how the mystery surrounding how things came to be is genuinely gripping and exciting, and this doesn't even take into account how engaging the fights themselves are, especially considering the main component of the series is fire. Fire Force provides extremely creative encounters and unique fights that don't really get stale whatsoever, which is impressive as this was a long-running series. What ultimately impressed me the most about this series is, apart from how the world is utilized to make you interested in finding out more about it, the various themes that the series tackles are not only very compelling, it also links with that world and makes a connection, the main one being the power religion can have on a society built upon it. The Holy Soul Temple being the foundation of the Tokyo Empire, its core beliefs surrounding Raffles I, Amaterasu, and Sol the Sun God is something that every citizen shares in regards to faith. So when we start finding out that the shape-shifting Yona took over Raffles I before making it back home and founded the church and introduced Amaterasu, which uses a human with Adola Burst as a sacrifice to power up the electricity of the Empire, all for the sake of the Evangelist's goal to return the world to the Great Flame of Fire, that core foundation gets shook completely and everything that was established by the Holy Soul Temple is put into question. The nuns, most notably Sister Iris, wonder if their belief could potentially be their ultimate demise. Even the very prayer of the series, which is used as a way to send those who unfortunately turn into infernals to their final resting place, and not to forget that they were once human beings, also gets met with skepticism, since who in their right mind would pray to a god that will lead to people's deaths? Then there's also trauma being an integral piece to Shinra's character, as he for the first time in the series in the beginning of season 2 deals with his emotions that he has bottled up inside ever since the fire incident and all those years he suffered being called a murderer for his mother's death. He temporarily gets manipulated by a girl into reaching the lowest depths of his heart who looks similar to Iris, who is later revealed to be the human sacrifice of Amaterasu and is responsible for the energy and electricity of the entire Tokyo Empire. Finally, Joker's backstory goes into the concept of leaving what is essentially a collective when he reveals he was part of the Holy Soul Shadow, who pretty much do the dirty work of the Holy Soul Temple and aren't afraid of using violent and downright deplorable tactics to get their way. All of these themes and ideas wouldn't remotely be a possibility if the established world of Fire Force wasn't as well crafted as it was. Which is ultimately why whenever I hear people say that Fire Force has nothing going for the series except arguably the worst usage of fan service, which I will definitely get into later, saddens me because it never takes into account or consideration everything that I just mentioned. To say that I fell in love with the series would be a massive understatement at this point. The series was able to hook me and give me one of the most fun experiences watching anime, despite how much this series gets mercilessly dragged through the mud constantly. One thing to note though, all of what I just mentioned solely goes to the anime. Once it reached the conclusion of season 2, I thought that the series reached its peak and it would have fallen like a lot of other shonen series on their way to concluding. However, nothing in this universe, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what the manga was going to unravel. To be completely honest, the manga is filled with so many reveals, plot twists, and amazing fights that I don't know where to even begin. I guess we might as well get into the world of Adola. I mean, Adola is a concept that gets introduced very early on in the series, as we see Shinra linking with other Adola Burst users in this supernatural place filled with black flames and a gray sky. This eerie world is meant to be connected with the collective subconscious of humanity, which is why when the first Great Cataclysm ignited, humanity's feelings of despair and hopelessness fueled those fires, almost burning everything in its wake. This doesn't stop there. Spontaneous human combustion, the very mystery that has impacted the world of Fire Force as we know it, gets solved as doppelgangers that exist in Adola attempt to intrude and merge with their human world counterpart, causing the combustion to occur. This is even foreshadowed back when Conra fought a demon inferno that looked similar to him trying to protect Asakusa village. Before I get ahead of myself, let me backtrack a bit because the arc that follows right after the anime is the eventual union of the White Clad and the Empire, where Captain Burns, after seeing the Evangelist up close thanks to Haumea, he basically bends the knee to the White Clad and joins their cause. This situation gets even worse as Company 8 is made to be traitors of the Empire for supposedly kidnapping Shinra for his Adola burst, and Obi gets arrested to eventually be turned into an inferno in front of Company 8. Apart from the fact that this arc wastes absolutely no time with how the White Clad make their biggest move in the entire series, this arc lays the foundation on how the series will progress beyond this point. We also get a taste of what might possibly be the best showdown in not only Fire Force but in manga as a whole, with Arthur and Dragon, which I will get to later on. Then we finally get the reveal of what truly happened in the church Hibana and Sister Iris were in when they were kids, as Hibana, Kareem, and Lee go underneath St. Raffles and find a hidden laboratory, and after inspecting it, Hibana gets struck with the realization that they were being experimented on with bugs that can cause human combustion in their food. Sister Sumire, who took care of the children, comes out of the shadows affirming Hibana's suspicions and even summons doppelgangers of some of the children who ended up burning in that experiment. This is not all, as we get what is, in my opinion, one of the greatest chapters in all of manga, as we get to reveal that Sumire was a businesswoman living in a world very similar to our own, who after getting fed up with humanity and how easily they sway over what the majority believe and think with no backbone of their own, she joined the Evangelists and leading humanity into their extinction with the Great Cataclysm as we know it. This chapter perfectly encapsulates why I love Fire Force so damn much, because seeing all of the elements of Fire Force's universe tie into the real world and even touch upon how people nowadays fall into the latest trends, dramas, insubstantial fads, and Okubo even comparing this idea to bugs swarming a flame, which connects to the beliefs that the Evangelist and White Clad have that justifies in their point of view the necessity of the Great Cataclysm, shows that if Fire Force is truly a bad written series with no substance going for it except fan service, this chapter wouldn't have ever existed. And it's genuinely shocking to me how people don't really talk about this moment that much. I mean, I understand the series ended back in 2022 and third season news has been as dry as the Sahara Desert, which has halted any discussion on the series for the most part, but this chapter brings an interesting perspective on our current society that I feel people should talk about more instead of Tamaki fan service in my humble opinion. Moving on, we have Arthur going on a journey for a new Excalibur after his initial encounter with Dragon, who becomes his rival. Arthur's delusional way of viewing life as a Night King, originating from him being abandoned by his parents, pretty much being what feels like his coping mechanism, is something that never really changes, even when he encounters his parents again in the Nether living with more kids on his journey. But this very delusional way of thinking is what gives the strength Arthur needs in order to fight Dragon in what is considered the best fight in the entirety of Fire Force, where we have the perfect antitheses between these two colliding in a fight that is so bloody intense and destructive that it not only managed to reach the damn moon, these two scrap in outer fucking space. Apart from the physicality this fight has between Arthur and Dragon, the characterization that is presented couldn't have been better applied even if Okubo tried. Dragon being the personification of despair, which makes the second Great Cataclysm as strong as it is, while fighting who might honestly be the most delusional optimistic person in the entire series with Arthur. These layers raised the stakes on this fight to the point that no other fight that followed was able to match it, and the conclusion to this fight was able to bring me to tears as I believe that this really was the end of Arthur's journey. And if this would have been Arthur's demise, you really don't get a better conclusion than this for a character like Arthur. However, like I've been saying, this isn't the end of Arthur, as I need to go over the final arc of the series, the Great Cataclysm Arc. After the White Clad unified with the Tokyo Empire Empire and let Captain Obi escape from getting turned into Inferno as they planned, they don't waste any time as Sister Sumini summons a mysterious stone pillar close to Tokyo. Shinra, trying to protect the pillar from destroying Tokyo, gets caught in the crossfire of Juggernaut's attack, which puts him out of commission. While in this state, thanks to the pillar being a part of the plan of making another cataclysm, Shinra managed to make an Adola link with Enka. After a little pep talk, Shinra uses his ability, and after reaching the speed of light in Adola, he sees Tokyo before the Great Cataclysm occurred, and these sets of panels are genuinely breathtaking, as for the first time in the series, we see Fire Force pretty much breaking the medium of manga, as it also deepens the story as a whole. A white-haired Shinra wakes up chained on a bed as the news reporter on television says that 3 months has passed since the first stone pillar and a 5th one has emerged. As we see Captain Obi and Hinawa open the door, we then find out that Shinra went into a rebellious phase in which he acted completely out of character, that his hair got piercings and even tattoos. The worst thing of all, however, was him hitting Sister Iris, who, mind you, Shinra was simping for the entire series, despite him having Hibana simp for him ever since their fight happened. Arthur deduces that in the time he was in Adola, Shinra became the same mother killer from the rumors down to the last detail, which could have potentially been his doppelganger from Adola. Sister Iris talks to Shinra and she reveals that ever since the pillars have risen, she has awakened 3rd generation powers of her own and feels as if she is some kind of a fake, which Shinra immediately makes the connection between her and the first pillar Amaterasu, as the public perception of him is of a mother killer, while Iris brightful, similar to the nation's impression of Amaterasu, which later on, after the final pillar rises, we get the confirmation that Sister Iris is indeed Amaterasu's doppelganger and the final pillar herself, with the final stone pillar representing a doppelganger Raphus I, as Shinra deals the killing blow. Despite the Fire Force companies praising Shira as a hero, the entire nation watching the broadcast labeled him a devil, as they didn't understand the situation, which made Shinra and other pillars disappear in the snap of a finger. The White Clad played the long game as they let Shinra live, so that by living with the disgrace of matricide, he will live not as a hero but a devil, so that very image ends up plucking off the last bud of hope people had of him as a hero and potential savior. With all of the pillars going to Adola as told by Arrow, Show's guardian, the final stage of the cataclysm has arrived, as the only thing that the White Clad need to do is to activate a switch that is inside a completely turned off Amaterasu. In this section of the story, we get fights like Vulcan U and Lisa against Dr. Giovanni, finally setting the score, Hinawa and Arrow joining forces to take out Ritsu and her Infernal army, the second encounter between Arthur and Dragon, and the highlight of the arc is the fight between Ogun and Charon. Ogun tells Charon that even if the people agree to want destruction, as fire soldiers, it's their job to protect people for the possibility of changing their minds, but Charon drops the bombshell that Haumea has been hearing the dark thoughts of the masses coming from Adola ever since she was a mere child. This review, which isn't shocking as this was built right at the conclusion of season 2, the story paints a completely different perspective on not only Haumea as a character, but the relationship Sharon has with her. Haumea's explosive personality and sadistic nature throughout the series now seems like a coping mechanism for her, and Sharon doesn't even seem as just her guard, which is pretty much his purpose for existing, but like a father figure she never had. After Dr. Giovanni plays 4D chess against Vulcan and Sharon sacrifices his life to stall Company 8, the White Clad managed to activate Amaterasu and chaos officially ensues. With all of the pillars being held in Adola and the activation of Amaterasu, the Great Cataclysm begins with flames starting to engulf half the world as imagination and reality have become one. We finally get revealed what each pillar member represents: passivity, madness, wrath, apathy, fear, destructivity, loathing, and despair. In Joker's own words, combine all of the 7 pillars together and you will get despair, which is the very fuel for the Great Cataclysm to progress to point of no return. This doesn't stop there, as we get doppelgangers show up killing many people throughout the Empire. Before the 8th stone pillar rose, Hibachi Shimen's doppelganger shows up and he is revealed to be the previous leader of Asakusa village before Konro and the adoptive father of Benimaru. We then get the second best fight in the series with Benimaru going against the doppelganger of the leader who he couldn't properly get the torch from. The relation these two had wasn't the greatest, as Hibachi didn't guide him directly in order to be his successor, but rather left him to learn on his own, whilst calling him an idiot most of the time. Before Benimaru was able to get his proper acknowledgement and do proper Nichirin, a kid who was upset his infernal mother was laid to rest ended up killing him for revenge. The fight pretty much revolves around Benimaru finally showing how much he has grown as the current head of Asakusa village, in which the fight ends with a beautiful Nichirin as Hibachi's doppelganger dies with the belief that Benimaru has truly made it. Going back to the Cataclysm, the doppelgangers run amok throughout the Empire and cause utter chaos. We see the return of Captain Haig, Crackhead Rekka, and Captain Burns in a shocking reveal that after passing away in the battle for Obi, he managed to merge with his doppelganger and keep his sense of self. Oguru, commanding Kurono as he usually does, tells him to join the Fire Force to fight off the doppelgangers. As soon as he leaves with Nataku, Kurono, with absolute shit luck, encounters Benimaru's doppelganger in one of the most frightening panels in the series. Fake Benimaru absolutely presses him, not even leaving him a choice to surrender whatsoever. However, Kurono's luck comes back as the real Benimaru confronts his doppelganger. He says that whoever wins the fight is the real Benimaru. Clone Benimaru doesn't waste time and goes all out as he does a Nichiri sun wheel that surrounds the entire world. The Asakusa villagers begin to doubt if the real Benimaru is able to win as he suddenly annihilates his doppelganger in one of the most beautiful double spreads in the series. A fight that was anticipated because of who Benimaru is as a character and did in basically one attack. In any other circumstance, this would have been one of the worst writing decisions I've ever seen. However, the Great Cataclysm essentially going back to people's perception, having characters like Kurono and even the Asakusa villagers doubting Benimaru in a way showed that people underestimated his strength, which in turn weakened doppelganger Benimaru, as well as giving the real Benimaru a chance to not waste any time and finish the job quickly, which goes with his character and how he has been portrayed throughout the series. With Benimaru's fight coming to a close alongside the many others with doppelgangers, the final stage is set as Shinra and his brother Sho go together to put an end to the Great Cataclysm and the Evangelist. Before we touch on the final set of chapters of Fire Force, we have to go back as we go over two of the three characters that truly bring the series full circle, and those two are none other than Sho and Mari Kusakabe, Shinra's brother and mother. Okubo basically put his entire stocks on the Kusakabe family, and for me to not talk about them in detail would be a massive disservice to the story, so bear with me here cause it's a lot. The tragic event that was the Kusakabe house burning was essentially a ploy to abduct Sho after awakening his Adola burst by Haumea by controlling the infernal presence in the house. Separated from his older brother from a very young age, he basically knew nothing of who he is as well as his family. That all changed as he encountered Shinra for the second time in the Netherworld, who told them he would keep their mom's promise to protect him and bring him back. Sho, who has never seen Shinra, doesn't believe him and begin their fight. As the two brothers have their brotherly squabble, Shinra, who is going at light speed towards Sho, gives Sho the opportunity to look into his memories. Memories of Shinra being slandered and accused of being a family killer, memories of Sho as a baby bonding with Shinra, and even gets a look at his mom. Him, who denied Shinra majority of the fight, ends up in tears accepting the reality of the situation. Of course, this development happened at the expense of Shinra, who ended up getting severely stabbed by Sho's sword. Haumea shows up, and as he asks her what happened 12 years ago, she uses her ignition ability, take control of him and suppress all of his memories with Shinra, stopping him from potentially betraying the White Clad. Later on, Shinra managed to make an Adola link with Sho, undoing Haumea's brainwashing. After threatening Ero, who is his guardian, Sho leaves the White Clad as he finally decides to look for answers of what truly happened with his family. Going through his family hospital records, he ends up finding out something shocking. There is no father documented, and with this would have been one of those the father truly left to get the milk moments, this instance is absolutely literal. There truly is no father. Sho with Ero ends up talking with the man who wrote newsletters about the situation regarding the Kusakabes, and he ends up revealing that the Holy Soul Temple pressured him to not publish a record, making the ordeal even more suspicious as Sho suspects Yona had a role with the scheme. As he wonders what truly happened with his family and why Shinra didn't become a devil but rather made into one, Sho ends up making an Adola link with none other than their mom, who early on in the series is revealed to be the Inferno inside their burning house. And this doesn't stop there. We get a look 17 years ago as we see Mari being pregnant with Shinra as the doctors question her if she truly is a virgin. She ends up being disowned by her parents even despite the test saying that she is, as who would actually believe a virgin pregnancy took place. After giving birth to Shinra, the doctor checks up on Mari and says there was a legend before the Great Cataclysm about a woman who conceived before sexual relations being told by an angel who said that the child would become a hero to save the world. A few years later, Sho is born in the same way as we see the three of them together. Mari proclaims that Sho is an angel that came down to bless their lives as Shinra says he will be a hero to protect him. We go back to Adola as Sho rationalizes the fact that despite him basically being a hero by a legend that came from a pre-cataclysm world, he is still being labeled a devil. Sho wonders why that is the case and what is his role as a virgin birth. A feather falls from the sky and as it touches him, he gets wings, realizing what is his true goal, which is to protect him and guide him. As the Adola link ends and Infernal Mari is engulfed in flames, Sho determines that someone is trying to disavow Shinra's existence and it is time to fight back.
Told you there was a lot.
This portion of the story is arguably the most important in the series as this answered two of the main questions. What happened to their mother and why the White Clad and the Evangelists are trying desperately to have Shinra be looked at as a devil. Also adding in the fact that the reason why the Cataclysm grows is because of despair and Shinra's heroism completely goes against that. All of this information basically turns every interaction shown between the Kusakabe family on its head. Every dialogue, every panel that may not even have words but only visuals. I mean, look at one of the most iconic moments in Fire Force. We at the time who saw Shinra in Adola as an Inferno trying to grab his face, in actuality was his damn mother. The way all of this was well crafted truly went above my expectations and even shattered them the first time I read this and even rereading the series for the sake of writing this script. Now that we covered the last important piece of the puzzle, it's time to look at the climax of the series and the confrontation that changes everything forever. As they enter Adola as brothers, the moment they break inside, they see flashes of disasters of all kinds in the world, as that is essentially the history of humanity's despair, and that very image is trying to assimilate with the world. They encounter a pillar that looks very similar to Amaterasu, as suddenly Haumea shows up affirming Sho's beliefs that it was done in compliance with revelations from God. Haumea, who most of her life closed her eyes hearing humanity's cries full of despair, finally takes off her crown, opening her eyes, shedding a tear to Charon who cares so much for her. She takes the hands of both Inca and Sumire, burning both of them alive in front of Shinra and Sho. Shinra, perplexed by this, wonders why she did it, as the answer is salvation, and Sho claims that Haumea has turned into a god as the evangelist finally shows itself. Haumea reveals that she finally arrived at the answer of who the evangelist truly is, and that is the final destination of the imagination, the extinction of the human race. Gods are not human creators, but rather humans created gods from their despair. Regardless of what is considered God in salvation, the opposite end is a despair created by many disasters, either natural or by humanity, and as society becomes safer, the idea of despair grows even more, which the end result is the Great Cataclysm. Haumea asks Shinra if he is indeed the one to stop the cycle of salvation and despair, what is the solution that doesn't involve death? Haumea ends up showing the bodies of both Amaterasu and Iris, which sends Shinra into rage, playing into the hands of Haumea and the evangelist. After Sho calms down Shinra to not fall into rage, they both attack together as they end up doing absolutely nothing to her. Shinra's mentality and outlook gets put to the ultimate test as he gets logically shut down every single time. As he swings, he finally is able to sway a strand of hair. They consider this a sign as death might not be the ultimate conclusion. As Haumea says the final flames are about to ignite, we go back as we see Obi's clone creeping from behind the real Obi as he slits his throat. The next panel is one that fully expresses Shinra's ultimate rage and a wave of true despair. Shinra's anger takes control of him and the world pays the ultimate price as it engulfs in flames. Everyone, and I mean everyone, burns. some in despair, others with laughter, but ultimately the entire world becomes a second sun as prophesized. As Shinra tries to attack with killing intent, Arthur strikes him from outer space and tells him to not give up hope, as he is the only one left, and for the first time acknowledges him as a hero. Things turn around even more as suddenly Mari appears in front of Shinra and we get the earth-shattering reveal that Shinra and Sho's mom is the Evangelist's doppelganger. This was the point in which I remember putting my phone down and taking this moment in. Mari Kusakabe is basically the hope humanity has, and this was one of those twists that truly made me cry. Seeing Mari's hopeful and upbeat nature back when she birthed Shinra, despite how much doubt and skepticism she was met with, paid off with her being the counter to the Evangelist, was absolutely perfect, and it even goes back to Iris being Amateratsu's doppelganger on top of that. Now with Mari in the fold, the tide seemed to turn as hope is within Shinra once more. After doing Soul Resonance, definitely not something from another series, Shinra unleashes his final form, Shinra Bancho Man. This moment was absolutely breathtaking and everything after is as well. But to emphasize how much of a troll Okubo actually is for this, he literally had Shinra say this before his fight with Sho all the way back in the first Netherworld invasion. The fact that this man was bold enough to do shit like this is absolutely insane to me. Haumea also transforms, linking to the Evangelist, and the most insane final fight to a series that I've ever seen commences. The black flames turn into flowers, a wheel pops up in reference to what Vulcan showed him early on in the series, and even creates an atmosphere from Haumea's attack. Shinra basically becomes God and just does his own reenactment of Genesis chapter 1. The black flames slowly start to wash away and the world is back to being blue again. However, Shinra now is met with a decision as to what changed this time around to not repeat the cycle of salvation and despair. He even starts taking in despair from what he created, finally seeing what Haumea has been through her whole life. She attacks once again with a blast at light speed, and after kicking it downwards, Shinra creates buildings, and he was so fast, he actually did it multiple times before Haumea merged with the Evangelist was able to react. Shinra doesn't stop and brings back everyone to life from the tears of Haumea. However, Shinra, instead of doing things all over again, he instead makes life less precious and death into something more familiar, as many characters are shown with peculiar traits from their deaths. As Haumea hides, we see Sharon talking to her, saying that everything he did wasn't for the human race, but for her, and the only thing he wished he could have seen before he died was her smiling face. She ends up doing it, essentially giving up, and now with Haumea making her choice, and with one final cake to the Evangelist by Shinra, the series comes to an end as the death god that he created takes away all of their fire abilities and spontaneous human combustion ceases to exist. To address the massive elephant in the room, or in this instance the massive death god in the room, yes, Okubo had the fucking balls to make Fire Force Soul Eater's prequel. As someone who didn't read Soul Eater at the time and still only read a single volume as of recording this, I was genuinely speechless to see Okubo not only reference his previous and most well-loved work with Soul Eater, but downright have it connect with Fire Force timeline-wise in such a beautiful way. I am in awe at how the conclusion of the story was as balls to the walls as it was. It felt organic, everything developed nicely, every plot thread concluded, and a thematic conclusion tying the boat to Shinra's journey as the day he found hope was the day he joined Company 8. The main theme of Fire Force being one of finding hope in moments that are filled with absolute despair and being yourself rather than going along with what everyone says or believe is one that is extremely powerful and was handled so incredibly well with the series conclusion. Fire Force gave me one of my favorite final arcs to a shonen series and one of my favorite endings to a story I've ever had the pleasure of reading. And so we have a story that in my humble opinion ticked all of the boxes that makes it a compelling story. Despite how much hatred, unlimited vitriol and criticism the series gets, this is something that will probably never change for me. With all of that being said, as much as I have praised Fire Force throughout this video so far, me talking about the criticisms that I have for the series was inevitable. I have two major criticisms that I have for the series, and one of them is extremely obvious and everyone at this point is dying to see what I have to say on said character, so I'll make you guys wait a bit more and talk about the biggest gripe I have with the series personally. One that I don't really see people talk much, if at all, and that is the underutilization of villains. Now, I can imagine many people right now being confused with this considering the amount of villains I've praised early on, but once you take a closer look, you start seeing a dent in the series that you can't really look away from after noticing. Let's take Flail for instance. Oh, you don't remember him? Well, he was actually present in Captain Obi's backstory as he showcased to Obi the corruption of the Fire Force department with this very weird point system that basically is like a priority list on what the department should work on first. This is a major moment for Obi as he ends up meeting Hinawa and together they end up putting an Inferno to rest despite them not being authorized. This turns around as this becomes the catalyst for the formation of Company 8. So you would think that the same guy that is present in such an important moment for one of the main side characters with Obi end up meeting in the first Invasion to Netherworld arc as he ends up being revealed to be a White Clad member in the mission to recruit Vulcan. Nope. Actually, he ends up fighting Giovanni with Vulcan trying to save a manipulated Lisa. And Flail ends up fighting Maki, whom he has absolutely nothing to do with aside from being enemies. The only thing I can say to this is, what was Okubo thinking while writing this? Did bro forget that Flail was present in Obi's backstory? As much as I love the interactions with Giovanni, Vulcan, and Obi, having a moment where we see Obi encounter the person that in a sense pushed him to become the person that he is currently would have been great and would have done a lot more for the arc in an emotional sense and a writing one as well. Another example is surprisingly Yona, which I praise because of his involvement with the world building of the series, but that's the very problem. Yona pretty much is a massive world building machine as he is only involved in the story where the plot demands it for the sake of building the world of Fire Force rather than actually playing an active role in the current events. The only instances where we see him actually do something is in the attack in Asakusa village with lookalikes, trying to disrupt Hinawa to help Arrow, commending a white clad member to kill Captain Haig, and that's it. What the fuck? We're talking about a character that is the reason why the praises to Raffles the First and Amaterasu are filled with irony because of his ability to pose as anyone, and this is all you have to show for him, Okubo? Are you serious? The point that I want to drive home is that while there are a handful of villains that are well utilized in order to push the story forward and convey the main message the story wants you to take away, like Haumea, Charon, Sho, the Evangelist, Sumire, and Dr. Giovanni especially, since he felt like an actual threat most of the series, and his background relating to Vulcan felt very personal, there are others that don't really do much, especially during the Stone Pillar arc. Their personality are basically non-existent, and that is something that can definitely play a factor in someone not giving a shit in what's going on in the series. While the great moments of the series and the good amount of great villains can serve as a crutch for a flaw like this, as someone who enjoyed the story very much, I would have loved to see the rest be more active and fight with their own set of motivations rather than be passive and not just feel like the plot is using them just because. With that out of the way, it's time to talk about one of the most controversial female characters in shonen as a whole. You can even argue she is the reason why the discourse surrounding Fire Force as a story is as fierce and toxic as it is around all walks of the internet. And that character is none other than Tamaki Kotatsu. I'm not going to lie, trying to come to terms with my true feelings on Tamaki's character as a fan of Fire Force was extremely difficult. To be brutally honest, as I've taken breaks on writing this script, despite me being in the middle of talking about certain portions of the series that I loved and adore, my head during said breaks couldn't stop to focus on what to possibly say regarding Tamaki's character. And now that we're here, I feel like there is so much to say, but I want to be as concise as humanly possible. Two disclaimers before I begin. One, I actually don't hate fan service and even enjoy it more times than not. Look at my AnyList that is linked to my channel and you will see. 2. I'm going to tackle Tamaki's character from a writing sense and not from an argument for or against fan service as it is redundant and not the point of this video. To start, I want to make a claim that will absolutely shock a lot of people, from haters and fans of the series alike, and I will ask you guys the favor of bearing with me here. So, Tamaki was actually close to becoming one of the greatest female characters in shonen. I know that sounds insane and even downright delusional. I was asking myself if I was going batshit crazy when I first came to this conclusion, but just hear me out for a moment. To give you the quick rundown of Tamaki's character, she's basically a typical tsundere who has this thing called leecher lore, which puts her in very awkward situations with any character in the series, all for the sake of providing fan service. Every instance this occurs, the series essentially halts anything that is taking place and puts all focus on Tamaki, almost like a lens is being put on her. I actually took the time in my reread of Fire Force for the sake of this video to note every single panel of Tamaki's leecher lore in the series. The total count, if I actually got them all and didn't miss one on accident, was 43, which is basically the length of 2 regular Fire Force chapters if put together. If you want to see the thread of all of those panels, I'll leave it in the description. Because the story proceeds to convey Tamaki in this manner, many people have argued that she breaks the show and the enjoyment of the series, and even as someone who doesn't mind fanservice at all, I can definitely understand why. But what if that was the very point? Sidetracking slightly, despite how rough around the edges Tamaki is at the beginning of the series in regards to her tsundere personality, as the series progresses we start seeing a softer and even dependable side of her, putting aside all the leecher lore shenanigans. Tamaki also being a nun, we see her being compassionate to Infernos, which is a contrast to how we as the audience perceive Tamaki to be when we first meet her in the series. Then there's the relationship she has with Juggernaut, as we see her actually care for him and tries to protect him even in her own weakness. We even get a training arc at the tail end of season 2 as Tamaki not only tries to better herself combat wise, she also self-reflects on her past, and we see how leecher lore broke her confidence down and the pressure of having everyone look at her as if she's some sort of freak. We even get a moment in which Shinra highlights Tamaki's biggest flaw, and that is the lack in confidence within herself, as he says how much of an overconfident loser Arthur is. I would argue that the main reason as to why Tamaki's leecher lore is as hated as it is isn't necessarily because it happens, because contrary to what Tamaki discourse would have you believe, not everyone who hates Tamaki also hates fan service entirely. The issue, however, is how Tamaki actually responds to it, and the fact that people who hate on Tamaki in the series seem to not realize is that this is actually intentional, not just for the sake of fan service but also for the sake of the themes in Fire Force. What makes these moments uncomfortable for the majority of people comes from Tamaki lacking so much confidence within herself. The moment we see her leecher lore activate, she pretty much shies away in shame and becomes insecure of herself and her body. This is why throughout the series, she self-deprecates even in moments where she did as much as she could. And this ties into what is, in my personal opinion, one of my favorite dynamics in the series, Tamaki and Assault. Midway through the series, we get introduced to Assault, who kind of becomes the perfect foil to Tamaki's leecher lore, as despite his overwhelming strength, Tamaki's embarrassing nature overwhelms him each and every time he confronts her. This brings forth some of the most genuinely funny stuff in the entirety of Fire Force in my opinion. In the Great Cataclysm Arc, where doppelgangers are running amok, we see Assault's doppelganger confront Tamaki, and her leecher lore has absolutely no effect on him because of how the real Assault is perceived to be this serious strong villain. As this occurs, we see people in the background absolutely shitting on Tamaki despite her fighting to protect them. We suddenly see the real Assault show up as he teams up with Tamaki to stop his own doppelganger. We see a character named Yoshida go into a massive rant about Tamaki and how terrible she is as a woman. Then we see her son Tatsuto refute her as they basically go into a battle of ideology surrounding someone's belonging in respective fields regardless of the person's traits and qualities. And Okubo goes to the absolute extreme with this as he basically has Tatsuto shatter the fourth wall and call his mom a background character as she ends up disappearing because she finished her role as one. The real Assault claims that eroticism is the future, and Light makes the claim that Tamaki's leecher lore is the symbol of life. Tamaki finally, after all of this time, from being insecure about herself and how she was perceived by others, she finally embraces the part of herself that made her insecure in the first place and goes all out in fighting the doppelganger of one of the strongest characters in the series and winning. With everything regarding Tamaki's development on the table, as the reason why I claim Tamaki was close to becoming one of the best female characters in shonen stems from the fact that Tamaki basically is utilized to show how people extremely hyper-focus on the female body and even look down on women despite what they may provide to society. And having something as powerful as having a character like Tamaki gain confidence in herself despite her insecurities and how she may be perceived, tie into the themes of not only the Great Cataclysm Arc, being going against what most people believe in order to be yourself, but also the overall theme of Fire Force being hope in a nihilistic world, is absolutely masterful. However, as great as the ideas presented were, the execution, in my humble opinion, is where things really fall flat on their face. While it makes sense having two background characters talk about their opinions, tying into society's perception and subconscious with the Great Cataclysm, the conversation between Tatsuto and Yoshida felt like Okubo was more focused on lashing out at the hate Tamaki and Fire Force as the series received, rather than actually develop Tamaki and use her as a vehicle to lash out at the criticism, whether valid or not. My question is, why didn't we see Tamaki rationalize all of those ideas presented to show her internalizing the gain in self-confidence that was always her end goal, and even tie that into her already decent and thought out backstory? Besides the obvious theme that Okubo is running in this final arc, why have two outside characters do the legwork of your character's concluding development rather than have that very character do it herself in a more compelling and not on the nose egregious way? This is where my frustration with Tamaki as a character truly lies, and is the reason why this final moment with Tamaki in her fight against Fake Assault feels so disconnected and just underwhelming despite how crazy the visuals themselves are. With female characters in shonen either being left out or just mediocre at best, Tamaki had potential to be one of the most grounded female characters in shonen while also tackling one of the most controversial elements in storytelling as a whole, that being fan service. Unfortunately, her final moments just ended up being a lash out moment by Oko, which just hindered the moment that Tamaki could have probably gotten as a character at the final stretch of the series. This is ultimately why, despite me not minding fan service and actually enjoying it, I can't really fault anyone who looks at Tamaki and say that her not being present in the story would have benefited Fire Force, at least from a reputation sense. Well, I will never ever agree with the claim that Tamaki ruined Fire Force, as everything positive that I had to say about Fire Force as a series excludes Tamaki for about a 95%. It is undeniable that Tamaki pretty much took all of the attention the series had, and majority of the discussions about Fire Force isn't about the themes the story wants to portray or how well Okubo executes these ideas or not, but rather people shitting on the fan service with think pieces about how quote-unquote harmful Tamaki is as a character, disregarding the majority of mangaka, men or women, don't give a single shit about any of this, but just wants to draw fan service to their audience since they actually enjoy doing it themselves and not because they were forced to, as if they were being held at gunpoint. It will forever be a frustration to me that Fire Force might not get the praises it actually deserves because of fan service discourse and Okubo basically lashing out at the criticism rather than just focusing on letting the story speak for itself. But regardless of where the conversation about this series goes, Fire Force is a series that I will hold dear to my heart probably until the day I die. From the cool action the series has, fantastic world building that is well utilized by taking a mystery approach, a very fun and engaging cast of characters, and even a handful of villains that made the series gripping with various themes and messages, Fire Force is, in my humble opinion, not only good, but peak shonen, and I'm tired of pretending that it isn't. While the manga has since been long over, the anime still has yet to adapt my favorite moments in the entirety of Fire Force, and I can't wait to see the day the anime finally returns with full blazing glory. If you have reached this point of the video, I couldn't possibly thank you enough, genuinely. Even more so if you're someone who isn't a huge fan of the series. The point of this video was never to go against people's criticisms or their opinion of Fire Force as a story, but rather express my love of the series and to that be understood by anyone regardless of where they stand. So if I was able to clarify and make you understand why people might love Fire Force as a story, then my job with this video was a success. To end this massively long ass video, what do you think of Fire Force as a series and what moment made you fall in love with it? If you didn't, leave a comment explaining why. Bonus points if you don't mention Tamaki in your comment and criticize other aspects of the series. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like as well as subscribe to the channel with the notification bell to never miss a video of mine. And with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. See you guys next time.
Hey Mom! Guess what? I'm gonna be a superhero! I'll keep you and Sho safe forever!
Well, that sure sounds cool.
Wish I could see you again. Mom. Sho.